What's going on, everybody? Doc, your average gamer guys, back in again. Last day on Earth action, and you might be wondering, why am I standing naked in just my boxers in the middle of Transport Hub? Well, I got a little story to tell you, and then we're going to dive into another little mini series on the channel. You guys and gals know, if you're not new to the channel, you know that I love testing some things out here in Last Day on Earth, and you also know that I love reading comments. Well, most of your comments. Some of your comments I don't like reading. Oh, but most of the time I do. And I enjoy a healthy amount of discourse, as long as it's, somewhat, I don't want to say professional, but somewhat nice and relatively cordial, I will say. And so Chris Kobe 634 commented on one of our ranking videos where we talked about best storages, and in that video I did make I'll say a bold comment, a bold statement around the context of what you should store. Okay, and I said that if you had enough guns and heals in the game, you really didn't need armor. Now, that's obviously a little exaggerated. You do need armor in the game, and that is important. But the variation and the difference between the worst to the best set of armor is vastly outplayed, especially when you consider worst to best DPS in weapons. He commented and say, hey, you made that comment. He goes, go try some of the harder bosses without armor and let me know how that goes. And I'll probably throw the comment up here really quick. And we exchanged a couple of thoughts back and forth. Of course, you need armor in the game. You should never go to locations without armor. But as many of you will find, especially as you explore and get used to, as you level up your weapons, as you get your weapon storages more full, as you are able to raid more consistently, you will find that with a stack of heals and even a moderately okay set of armor, like a tactical armor set, for instance, you can really brute force your way through a lot of the game if you have the best set of weapons and, again, enough heals. In the context of storage, what would I tell you to rank, and how would I tell you to rank those three things? Well, I'd put guns at the very top. I'd put heals very close beneath that, especially good heals, right? I'm not talking about stacking up just a ton of berries. I'm talking about if you have an opportunity to fill an entire chest or rack full of medkits, you should do that. That's going to be super helpful for you. That's going to be a resource you're going to use everywhere that you go, and ends up being really, really important. And then below that, I would tell you armor. Now, as you get more experience in the game, and Chris, I think, has the experience to know that armor becomes pretty easy to grab. You can go do some bunker runs relatively naked, right? With enough heals, go get some chests. You hit one of each of the crates there, you're going to have 4 or 5 sets of armor, and you're going to be in pretty good shape. You go do some Blackport PD, you go do some waves, you're going to be able to do the same thing. And there's plenty of other events where I think you really can go. In addition to that, while heals are not necessarily the hardest thing to craft, crafting weapons, guns specifically, some of them, most of them, you just can't craft. So you have to rely on stockpiling though. So in the context of the video, I understand where that comment may have come off a little brazen and a little exaggerated, but the point stands around what should you store and what you should prioritize, especially as a newer or kind of mid-game player where storage can feel really tight. This is actually going to be another video that I think I jump into. I actually have it written down because I'm getting to that point even late game stages here on in my free-to-play account, where I've had to kind of modify what I'm hanging on to. We had a Discord discussion going on about how much of any certain item should you keep, which I think is a really big challenge that a lot of players run into. So, Chris Kobe, thanks for the idea here. I'm going to go ahead and try 2 things today because I'm curious. I'm curious to see, can I withstand some of the harder bosses in the game, and can I just out-heal their attacks? Should be interesting. I think I can. I think easily we could go to Bunker Alpha, for instance, and kill the blind one. I think there's quite a few bosses that we could actually do that. So I figured, as a first shot, we'll try Transport Hub. I have a second idea here that I'm going to go try without armor, which I think is going to be much more of a challenge. But I think with enough heals, we'd be surprised how far we can get in this second section. But That's what we're doing. I'm going to use my little doggo friend just because I have him here. I obviously cleared this. I have 120-ish med kits. I have some scars and a whole bunch of ESSs and a couple of pistols that we're going to run through here to use up. I'm not going to use the drone unless we die, right? Maybe we die once or twice. Maybe we'll give the drone a shot because the drone would be a huge companion help, but I'm going to try to do this pretty well straight up. Now, I don't know what boss I have, so we could either get the butcher or the miner. I think both have their pros and cons about being harder, and we'll see who we get and see if we can kill them without any armor. And unfortunately, we have the pest, so let me kill the pest here really quick. Get out of here, pest. Look at, I could kill this guy. He's like a pseudo boss. All right, well, that didn't pan out. All right, let's see here. Now, I think the one thing that is going to be interesting is speed. All right, so I think, honestly, I do believe this to be the easier of the two, because there's a good chance I just don't get hit by this boss at all. Now, you can make the argument and say, well, that doesn't make it very hard. Well, part of being able to perform well in the game, I think, is tactics, and I think knowing bosses and knowing how they operate and understanding strategies, right? You could say the blind one in Bunker Alpha could be a difficult boss if you don't know the strategy, and you could easily pretty well insta-die. Now, that boss is going to be pretty well guaranteed to hit you. There's not much you can do. So this is probably not the best reflection of this test, but right here, we're going to go ahead. I'm even going to just swap. I'm going to let him heal, and we should be pretty well good. And even if he did hit me, I really do think we could absorb quite a few of the hits from this boss. I'm not going to test it because the best way to kill the butcher here is to just not get hit. So we'll let him heal. He's going to do his thing. He's going to run back here. We're going to shoot him a whole bunch, and we're going to run around this in circles. We're going to use our pistol to slow the guy down, and then we're just going to drop scar rounds into him until he dies. And speed was, again, speed is probably one of the big things that I actually thought more about than armor reduction. What is interesting to take a look at, and one of the other points that I brought up in the discussion in that video, was the fact that there's a pretty small variance, really, when you go to consider armor in this game. If you take a tactical armor set, which I would say is probably like the best, most used and consistent. You find it everywhere. You can find it at Blackport PD. You find it at Alpha. Obviously, you can get some higher sets at like Port Lab, for instance. But I would say most folks are generally probably running a tactical armor set. It's also the easiest to craft, so it makes a lot of sense to be able to do that. And it provides, I forget what the total count was. I want to say it was like 24 armor points in total when all put together. If you then go to arguably one of the highest armor sets in Kevlar armor, you're only gaining about 14 points of armor. Now, that's not insignificant when it comes to damage reduction, but it is vastly different than the difference between, let's say, melee weapons and guns, which is probably the closest comparable we have with this experiment. And you could also take a look at even going as far as to say, okay, what's like a moderately good gun that you can craft versus the top end of the SCAR? The jump between the two of those, especially with modifications on weapons, is pretty undeniable, right? So again, comment being prioritize weapons. I really do think prioritize heals. Of course, have some armor. Don't go to locations without armor. That just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and you won't have a lot of fun doing that if you go that route. However, if you are in a pinch and you have an abundance of heals and you can spare weapons, you'd be surprised, or I think you might be a little surprised at how much you can actually clear and how much you can push through to go through different locations. So let me grab my crate here. Let's see, can we get the drone blueprint? I used some what do you call it, to some rations to get this powered back up. This wasn't a video I intended to do today, so I always do appreciate the comments. And this was a really, I actually think this is going to be a really good experiment and a fun one to test out here. So I'm excited for this. I think we have some of these already in here. I'm just going to drop that off. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to delete this armor. And I will throw this on, and that gets me the last of the things that we need. We're going to go from here. Okay, the next test will be much harder. But we're going to use heals, and we're going to use some good guns. We're going to test this out, see if we can get a little progress. See you there in a sec. All right, ladies and gents. Test number 2, Bunker Bravo. So, just to clear up, there is currently no event going on right now. This actually starts very soon. So we're going to get a little jump start on this. I am going to attempt floor number 2 and see, can we defeat this? Can we get through the entire floor without armor? Now, stockpiled some heals. I have some weapons here that we're going to try to make use of. I think there's a couple important components. First and foremost, I am going to be using an anti-rad. It is a form of heal. This will give us just moderate, just very, very moderate poison protection or radiation protection. So we're going to give this a go. I obviously have a good set of scars. We have a good set of VSSs. And then I did bring a couple of pistols because we're going to utilize that. I am also going to use the boosts that we get for Bunker Bravo. And I'm going to see what I'm curious about, and why I think this one is probably potentially one of the exceptions is not necessarily because of the damage that the enemies do, but more so the radiation damage that we will take over time. Now, I do have the anti-rad pills, so we're going to be popping these things like candy, and we're going to see how far can we get, can we push through, and can we clear past the boss here on floor 2. Now, transparently, if I have to give my advice or my thoughts up front, I think this is going to be really tough. I really genuinely do believe that. We don't have some of the boosts or some of the help that we get from our dog, for instance. And this one really requires, again, radiation protection. I feel like it would be kind of the same going to the northern zone. Some of the environmental effects aren't necessarily related to, obviously, doing the fights with the enemies themselves, right? But we're going to see how this impacts us. I am going to go ahead. I'm going to deactivate turrets and do vent clearance here. I'm going to activate. Let's hit one of these, and let's just rock and roll. And we're going to pay really close attention to ourselves here. And I'm going to just genuinely try to stay as healthy as I can. And see, again, we're going to take some damage here. But the damage that we take isn't going to be terrible. Like these toxic spitters, or the whatever they're called, like these guys, they're dealing me 30 damage, right? That guy hit me for 50 damage there. Radiation is actually not stacking up as bad as I thought. And here we're going to really learn how much I hate riot shield zombies, because this is going to be the thing I think that slows me down the most. We're obviously going to prioritize running scars here, just because that's going to be the best. Acid melters really doesn't matter too much. I do like now, with the most recent update, the fact that we can see and track our radiation damage. That's really nice. We also got a pretty good draw, I would say, here on zombies. I do think the acid spitters, or toxic spewers, excuse me. We have the toxic darters. The toxic spewers here, the reason I did vent clearance is because I do think those guys would be amongst the most difficult. Just because they're pools. So again, I'm going to just stay really healthy here. Gone through a scar already. We did not do patrol cancel, so we are going to run into that. And here we go. This right here, slowing me down. Get out of the way, riot shield zombie. I should have brought AKs. I could have punched through these guys a little bit. I think the other big thing that's helping now, as comparative to the old days, really before the change with automatic weapon swapping, this would be exceptionally harder without automatic weapon swapping. I do want to say that. I do genuinely believe that's a big change that would impact our ability to do this. Because if we are fighting these zombies and then had a gun run out, and then had to jump in and, you know, queue up another weapon. Obviously, we could do that quickly, but that just takes time. And time is money, as they say. Or more so, time is you being dead if there's a couple zombies on you and you don't have any armor. So I think there's a few things that make this much more feasible now. And I'm actually pretty impressed the fact that we haven't taken as much damage like this, and that's capped at 20. These guys are the ones that I think would be the most trouble. I am curious. Does this just deal... yeah, it just deals 20 damage. So this just deals 20 damage. Again, you can heal through that. The real question here will now be the boss. And I'm actually really curious to see how this is going to go with him. All right, we're swapping this up. I'm going to pop one of the pills. This will just help us keep to full health. Or be able to queue up full health, rather. Like, that was a good hit. We really can't afford... these are big hits here. Can't afford to take a lot. The boss will be the real question. We're going to punch through this. And we're just going to scar this up, baby. How much does he deal per hit? 50? So basically, I just have to heal through. I got to get another stack on. I'm going to queue up full health. Bunker Bravo done with no armor. Floor 2 at least. Floor 2. Floor 2. Whoa! Honestly, I am a little surprised. I am a little surprised that the radiation damage didn't impact us as much. I was really, if I have to give full transparency here, I was fully expecting to have run through like 2 or 3 stacks of these, to be honest with you. I thought we were just going to be ticking radiation damage really, really hard. It escalates. But again, the ability to push through with just pure DPS, so many of those enemies didn't even hit us. They didn't even get close to hitting us. And I think it's really fair to say that this is one of the most difficult locations in the game for many reasons. And that was pretty good. That was pretty good. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to continue on with this series. I actually have enjoyed this. I do think we need to get over to Transport Hub. Again, we need to try the miner, because I think that's a totally different boss fight. We definitely need to go do some Port Lab. If there's some other locations you'd like me to try, I'm happy to do that. But to be honest with you, I feel pretty confident. Maybe we do like Alpha Hard Mode. That could be an interesting one too. Alpha, I think, we'll maybe do a floor or 2. But I think you're going to see if we have, again, generally, I don't have unlimited guns, but I have a pretty big stockpile of weapons here, especially scars. I think with scars and heals, we could blow through a lot of the locations, as you just saw us be able to do here. So we'll queue up another one. We'll try to work each of these separate floors of Bunker Bravo here, and see if we can get through all of them without armor. I think would be really, really interesting. And again, we'll jump over to Port Lab, run through a couple of the zones there, and I think fight both of the bosses. Could be a really, really interesting test as well to see if we really can make it. I think on regular mode, we'd stand a pretty good chance. I really do. Hard mode's different, but again, we have the boosts, right? We have the ability to cycle through the boosts, and maybe we look at doing something that maybe just negates whatever the enemies are getting, and finding kind of a sort of pseudo fair way. But I think, again, understanding techniques, understanding the different aspects of bosses and boss fights and the different stuff that you have going on, and understanding that damage and the ability to heal through a lot of the damage. The concept that most of these enemies, they deal a set amount of damage per hit. right? There are very few enemies in the game that are going to kill you with a single shot. Frenzy Giants are a really good example of this, right? Frenzy Giants armorless I'm going to get smoked, right? I'm going to get absolutely smoked if I get touched. If I have the capability between pistols and scars to keep them away from me and not get hit, obviously we have to play and be smart about our technique, that we can avoid. Most other enemies every enemy is dealing a set amount of damage. The armor helps to reduce the impact of that, so that if you do get ganged up on, or if you're a little less careful maybe, or unable to fight zombies one-on-one, then you can sustain a little bit more damage and not die so quickly. That's, again, what armor is there to provide to do. So we will keep testing this. If you got any other thoughts, let me know. Chris, again, really appreciate the discussion in the comments there. Hopefully you found good discourse with my comments back, and hopefully my point was relatively clear, and or rather I cleared my point up in this video as it relates to that. And again, a really interesting little experiment here that I'm excited to continue to try out. So if you got other locations or other bosses you want me to try, feel free to drop them down below. If you thought we were going to make it through, I'd be interested to know that too. And let me know some locations you think that we might not be able to. And I think we can give that a try and see what happens. So as always, if you enjoyed this one, if you learned something, hit that subscribe button for us. Want to flash some socials, like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube thing. We really do appreciate all the support. Got a ton of videos queued up for the week. We're going to be traveling, so some stuff ready to go for you. We got a good week of content. I don't know where this one will fit. It's a good one. So I enjoyed this a whole lot. We got some free-to-play updates as well, so I think you'll enjoy those. And we're still working through the greedy event, getting our caps, so this is kind of helpful for me to grab a few things here as well. We got some fun events coming up, Bunker Bravo being one of them, so be on the lookout for that. Get your season points, all that good stuff. So links in the description if you want to come join the Discord. We got a channel over there to continue the discussion. If you want to comment down below, again, do my best to read them all and respond if I can, and really just appreciate all the engagement. Again, help us get to 10K subscribers. We'd really appreciate that. Big channel milestone for us, and that'd be great. Love to have you. Love to see you. Love to chat with you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.